Hi, Cody. Thank you so
How's
much for
it going?
joining us.
It's my pleasure to join you.
Oh, did you just finish doing an episode right now?
It is a busy time in Dodgerland right now. A lot of articles being turned out on the website. Podcast side of things, we're trying to keep it steady around 2 episodes, maybe 3 episodes a week. We're not as active as the other channels, the bleedlospodcast, if anyone's interested in that. But yeah, it's been a busy time. Dodgers, obviously, big
Yeah.
thing in Los Angeles, big thing in baseball right now. They're the talk of the town. They're the talk of the whole league, actually.
Hmm.
Depending on who you ask, could be a good thing of what they're doing, or could be a bad thing. But at the end of the day, it's content, and that's kind of what we're covering right now. So, and them winning the World Series this past year, and I'm sure we'll get into that in this episode as well. It's just, through the roof in terms of, content, what we're working on, and what we're trying to provide to everybody that's listening.
Yeah, I mean, I think last season provided tons of content back to back from Otani, the 50-50, going past 50-50, just so many incredible, aside from the World Series, but incredible moments last season. But let's start with you, the beginning.
Okay.
So let me give the audience, the listeners, a little background. So you're the co-editor of Dodgers Beat and full-time host of Bleed podcast, which, by the way, your nickname is Canelo.
Yeah. Love the nickname. It was given to me by a friend of the show and old host, Juan Ramirez, good friend of mine. And it kind of just stuck for a couple episodes, and then I just made it my moniker for the rest, and it's kind of my identity with the show. So
Yeah.
I like it. A lot of our fans like it, and it's just a unique thing. A little bit of flavor that we add to our podcast that's a little bit different than other Dodger podcasts out there.
Definitely. And you have an impressive background contributing to various sites like Dodgers Way, Dodgers Lowdown, and Dodgers Tailgate. You're also a graduate of Wilmington University, and you're not just a journalist, but a passionate Dodgers fan. Keeping, as you said, keeping all the content and everything going from storylines to rumors, lots of rumors, and insights surrounding Dodgers baseball. Now, I know that, well, I want to get to the root. I want to hear a little bit about you because you're obviously not in LA. You're where right now? Are you?
So I'm actually all the way on the East Coast. I'm in the small state of Delaware, so kind of in that Philadelphia area.
Mhm.
So a lot of Phillies fans. There's a lot of Baltimore Orioles fans as well. Obviously, football is the talk of the town around here with the Eagles in the NFC Championship as we're recording this. But yeah, baseball. The Dodgers. Being a Dodger fan, it's a very unique thing out here. However, they do
Mhm.
have a large fan base, not only just across the country, but on the East Coast as well. And I'm not alone over here. However, within my friend group, my family group, it's really just me and my stepdad. So we kind of root for the Dodgers. It kind of started way back when I was in middle school, and kind of I'm in this golden era of Dodger baseball. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to experience the old Dodgers ownership with the Frank McCourt era. That's kind of before my time. So I've been heavily invested since around the 2012 season, and then it's kind of been just winning success and spending a lot of money since then. So I guess you could say that's why I gravitated towards it so quickly,
Mhm.
and kind of just took it to an extra level now where it's kind of always been my goal to try to cover the team and make connections, and then kind of to do what I'm doing now is kind of what the goal was, maybe 5-6 years ago.
So you graduated from college with what degree? Communications, journalism?
So it's a little bit different. So I actually graduated with an education degree. I was originally supposed to be a teacher, a history teacher with a lot of, English and literature and all that stuff on there. So a lot of writing, a lot of reading, a lot of, digging into some stories and all that. So I actually don't have any journalistic background besides just kind of doing it freelance, getting connections and what I have now. All of that is just based off of the decision I made, from high school to go to college. I wanted to be a teacher, but then the COVID pandemic happened,
Mhm.
kind of threw a curveball in a lot of people's lives, including my own, where I kind of just didn't see the fit for me anymore. So I pivoted, and that's kind of where we are right now, covering the team full time.
Wow. So you've kind of been doing this for 4-ish years, so to say?
Yeah, it started a little bit kind of just, it was a hobby after high school, and then in college, a lot of free time. It became more of a full time thing to now it's pretty much daily articles every single day, multiple podcast episodes per week. When the regular season and the postseason roll around, that's where, you got to get straight to work and cover the team. A lot of storylines. And you already mentioned it. The Dodgers this past season had plenty of storylines from the get go, from Otani arriving to camp, from the gambling situation, and Ipe, his interpreter.
Which
That's
there's news
that's
with that
that's a
right now
still
today.
ongoing
Yeah.
story today. And then just all the way to the end, winning the World Series, and then just this off season in particular. I mean, they've kept all of us busy. Anybody that's covering baseball, but particularly the Dodgers, they have their work cut out for them.
Definitely. I can't even, just as an observer, as a fan, my husband and I, when he gets home from work, he's like, "Did you hear this? Did you hear that?" Sometimes I'm more up to date because he's working. And he's in education, he's a principal. So it's funny that you said that.
That's funny.
He's a former
Yeah.
teacher. So you guys would have a lot about education and Dodgers. Um, so you shared a little bit about where you live, your degree, but what sparked other than like how did it become? You mentioned it was a hobby of yours. So how did that become a hobby where you just decided I'm just going to do all of this aside from COVID? Because you could have done anything.
Yeah, that's true. I've always enjoyed, athletics, and like I've played baseball. I continue to play baseball. I do all that stuff behind the scenes. Try to stay in shape, all that. So baseball and athletics is just a passion of mine as well. And then when you get into the behind the scenes of what makes baseball work, obviously you got the rule book, the game within the game. However, nowadays, the past 15-ish years, it's become a very statistical driven sport, more so than any other sports. And I'm not a math guy. That's why I wanted to go to school to be a history teacher. Math is not my forte, but it's something when I look at if I can put it to something like baseball statistics, all the new stats that they're coming out with now, and try to kind of do deep dives on whether what the team's doing, try to play GM a little bit, but then also nowadays where it's like I'm covering the team, I'm seeing, I'm talking to people that within the organization, people that cover the organization. I have a wider understanding of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and that's where I try to articulate that in writing. And you can do a lot. There's only so much I can post in a little Twitter post, and if I want to explain myself more, explain more of the process, or just go more in depth, I just like writing. So that's kind of been my thing where it's like, if I want to get everything that's in my brain here out on paper, well, the best way to do that is the internet. So it could go to the void. People could read it. More and more people have been reading it over the years. But yeah, it's down to just baseball. It is pretty much my life. It's something I think, eat, sleep, dream all about it. The Dodgers in particularly, but I'll have a conversation multiple hours about any team, any player, especially my friend group. Baseball is kind of the end all be all. Obviously, with other sports going on, I'll definitely key into those, especially with football. College football just wrapping up this past Monday.
That
But
was pretty
baseball,
exciting too this season.
yeah, the college football with the
Yeah.
expanded playoffs. I was a Notre Dame fan. I was rooting for them. Didn't end up winning, but yeah, I just sports in general. Just typical male. I love sports. I love going all into that. But just the passion of trying to write my opinion and my feelings on it is what got me into writing, because I was already a decent writer. I've learned a lot over the way. And then with all the, experience I had through college, high school, and then now with talking and reading, just even reading other people's work just makes my work a little bit better, because then I can see, hey, that's how they transitioned this. That's how they did that. Maybe I can apply that to my own.
I love that. And so, what are some storylines or players that we should be keeping our eye on this season? I
Well,
mean, I think there's a lot.
there's a lot of storylines. I mean, the Dodgers just dropped, In back-to-back off seasons, they're about to drop. Last off season they dropped over $1 billion. Granted, it was on two separate players that took up a large portion of that. Otani with 700 million, Yamamoto with the 325 million, a couple other players sprinkled in there. I think what they've done this offseason is kind of something that I wouldn't say I didn't expect, but it's definitely surprising, especially the amount of signings they've made. The trades that they've made. I know we've let go of a lot of fan favorites. Gavin Lux was a huge I was a huge fan of his. I've gotten connected with him on more than one occasion. So seeing him get traded to Cincinnati, that was a gut punch right there. But
Seeing
then you
him
look,
in a New Jersey yesterday
yeah, at
was
their
sad.
fan fest. But you see all the players that they have added, there's a bunch of storylines that can just be based off of that. I think the biggest thing is just how do they deal with the villain aspect? Because I don't think it's ever been as blown out as proportion as it is this upcoming season. If they lost in the first round of the playoffs last year, we wouldn't be hearing any of this debate right now of are they bad for baseball? Are they the villains of baseball? And I've even written about that the past couple of weeks where it's like the Dodgers themselves and their fans, they should kind of just identify with that. They should just, accept that they are the modern day, New York Yankees. Before my time, in the early 2000s, late 90s, that what the Dodgers are doing now are what the Yankees did then, and they won, a span of 4 World Series in 5 seasons. So that's what we want the Dodgers to do. And in terms of players, I mean, just take your pick. I mean, I'm curious to see how Mookie Betts does at
Mhm.
shortstop. Again, given a full off season to prepare for it, never going to bet against that guy if you give him the time to work on his craft. He's one of the best players in baseball for a reason. I mean, we're going to see Otani back on the mound again. This is the first time as Dodger fans we get to see him as a full season or at least 3/4 of a season as a true two-way player, which has never really been done by anybody else in baseball. But my whole thing is I want to see how they deal with the pitching and the injuries that they've been dealing with the past couple of years because it's not just a Dodgers issue; it's a league wide issue. I see it in youth sports, even as young as middle school, high school, and the Dodgers are they have their fair share of Tommy John surgeries, shoulder injuries, and they're bringing in a guy in Roki Sasaki who kind of had some metrics going against him with some decreased velocity. So how are the Dodgers going to manage that workload? How are the Dodgers ideally going to handle all these players with 26 spots on the roster? I'm curious to see how they navigate that. But they have the best front office in baseball. They have the best manager in baseball, and they have the best team in baseball right now. And that's the reason why players want to play with the Dodgers.
I agree. I completely agree. So, can you share a memorable guest episode, a write up? I guess I'm sure there's a lot, obviously, but is there any special one that you just think of often or just
Yeah, I mean,
milestone type?
so in terms of the show, we've had a lot of players come on, especially gotten to interview, whether it's players or people in the front office or formerly in the front office. Guy that usually comes on all the time is former Dodgers general manager Ned Coletti, mastermind of pretty much what the Dodgers identity was in the early, 2020s, especially that World Series winning team. He drafted guys like Jock Peterson, like Corey Seager. He had his hands on Cody Bellinger as well. So he's very insightful. I mean, that he just the way he talks about baseball, the way he's passionate about baseball, and the way he still cares and loves for the Dodgers. Talks about them on Sports Night LA as well. Helps out the crew there. But I would say the one guy that I've talked to before and that we're hoping to talk to again is Dalton Rushing. I always like talking to these minor league players because these are the ones that their eyes are wide open. They're looking to see. They're looking to make their mark. They're also trying to be humble as much as they can as well. And especially when you're in the Dodgers farm system where like, hey, you look at the major league roster, it's really hard to be a minor leaguer, in your, 18, 19, 20, whatever age you are and try to say, hey, I have to compete with that. I have to try to, build upon myself, compete with myself, make myself better. And when we interviewed Dalton Rushing last year, that's pretty much everything that he exemplified with the Dodgers organization, where it was just saying, you know, there is no, I in team. I'm going to try to do what's best for myself, but I'm also going to try to do what's best for my team. I mean, if you even look at last season, he gets promoted to AAA. he's a traditional catcher. He's been a catcher his entire life, college, high school, majors, and they tell him, hey, they want you to try some, left field, and he pretty much took it with ease. Went out there, did it for a couple games, then went back to catcher a couple other games, and it just showed what the Dodgers value, and that is versatility at the end of the day. And yeah, once I get in contact with him again, we'll go over everything that he went through last season, but just kind of the way he presented himself, you know, kind of giving us the behind the scenes look as well. And then he even told us all fair, like where he was going to be starting the season, which I thought was nice of him to do.
Oh, that's nice. And how has you mentioned the fan base, how has the fan base, I guess, influenced? Because they are loud. Every post I've seen, it's bring back Teo before he was resigned. And now the heaviness is Kike. And you've seen, I'm sure. So, how do you guys feel that heaviness of the fan base? I'm sure the players do, but on your guys' end,
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the players, definitely do. I mean, Teoscar Hernandez, you pretty much alluded to that in his press conference, and I like when players are honest, and he was pretty much honest the entire free agency. It was almost to the point where it was like, this is kind of unusual for a player. He mentioned during the entire regular season, yeah, I want to stay here. If an extension happens, I'll sign the pen and paper. Give me the pen, I'll sign the paper. Off season comes, he tears up during the celebration at Dodger Stadium. Clearly, this guy really wanted to come back, and everybody that was a Dodgers fan, they wanted to bring him back as well. And the fans, they people that say the fans don't have a voice, they do, and especially as large of a fan base that the Dodgers have, where it's not just the city of Los Angeles, it's a global, international market now. I mean, obviously, if you look at the players on the team, we have tons of Hispanic players from whether it's from Mexico, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. Now we got that Japanese market coming in here, and then we recently signed a Korean infielder, so Ha-Sung Kim. That's going to be another avenue of it, and that's not even to mention all the other players that the Dodgers have had throughout their history. Their fan base is global. Their fan base is all on social media. They're one of the best in terms of how passionate they are. Yes, it can get a little rowdy, especially the two previous seasons, two early first round playoff exits. But, you know, at the end of the day, they're a passionate crowd. They're sometimes they get a little bit of a bad rap for, I guess, things that have happened in the past, but it's a completely different environment now. And I've been to Dodger Stadium a couple times, flowing out there, and it's a great environment. It's the upgrades they've done to the stadium and the city itself. And then if you even look at currently what's going on with the wildfires, how everybody's pitching in, all the Los Angeles and California sport teams, they're pitching in their efforts as well to help the community. But yeah, they are a vocal bunch, and everybody kind of feels their presence.
definitely, definitely, yeah. And we have the biggest traveling fan community too, fan group,
Yeah,
Pantone.
Pantone. I've been to a couple games where they've been there to take over entire stadiums, and it's a different vibe. It's very fun when you're a Dodger fan in an away stadium, which has been most of my fan experience when I go to games,
Yeah.
whether it's in Philadelphia, Baltimore, or Washington. Their fan base, the Dodgers, they have a large population out here on the East Coast, especially in Philadelphia and Washington. Not so much more as with the Phillies, kind of getting a little bit better than years past, but they still make their presence known, and that's the thing about Dodgers fans. They will travel with their team because of how passionate they are, and that's what gets you back to like when people question, what are the Dodgers doing? Are they bad for baseball? The one thing I like with Andrew Freeman and Brandon Gomes, the guys who are kind of the masterminds of this roster, they always say, "Well, we're doing what's best for our fans." Because at the end of the day, Dodgers only have one fan base to care about, and that's their own.
I agree. Even with the $20 hot dogs.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some
Yeah.
price to pay. We were talking about it all fair with the Fan Fest. Clearly, it's kind of a growing pain thing because a couple years ago it was entirely free.
Hmm.
Then last year they're like, oh well, it's a $10 charge. Now I think you have to pay for parking and to get in as well. So I just think it's it's like, hey, do you want these super teams to be built? Well, someone's got to pay for them. So I also think it has to probably do something with crowd control. Probably the volume of fans that are interested, especially after a World Series championship, is at an all time high. I mean, if you look at the
Yeah.
parade they had in Los Angeles in November, I mean, it was phenomenal. I mean, it seemed like the entire state was in Los Angeles that day.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
um,
even for the Otani bobbleheads,
yeah,
those
we have a
lines are
guy
crazy.
that has season tickets, and he was just telling us about the entire ride and the event of all of these bobbleheads because he tried. That's what he tries to go for. That's the other
Okay.
thing about the Dodgers and what they have going at their stadium is their bobbleheads are pretty much unmatched. Their giveaways are
Yeah.
you can't compete with them, and it's something that people will go crazy for. And that Otani bobblehead in particular, especially when they start throwing in those gold editions, people get crazy over their collectibles.
Yeah. I will say I did score a World Series ring. So I took my kid and my husband couldn't make it because he was working. So we both drove up there and got our rings. So that was a pretty neat giveaway. Um, so as a baseball and even Dodgers um, fan, what is your favorite moment in history? In history, like
I would say in my time watching, there's a couple ways. I look back at Kershaw's no hitter when I watched that when I was in my last year of I think it was middle school, like eighth and maybe ninth grade. I was in ninth grade at that time. Staying up late. It was a West Coast game. I'm on the East Coast. The games don't start till like 10 p.m. here. So the grind of an East Coast Dodgers fan,
mm,
uh, don't sleep on it because we're watching. Most of us are staying up watching these games, especially someone like myself who kind of has to watch and cover the team and maybe
mhm,
catch the replay the next morning. But Kershaw was one of my favorite players growing up. I mean, it's just if you think about Dodger baseball, it's Kershaw. If you think of what he was and what he's brought up, I know we haven't seen him as of late just because age, health, that's kind of taken him aback. But that no hitter was definitely a highlight I'll have because I've never really watched a no hitter on TV like from innings 1 through 9. I always will tune in maybe on the MLB app like during the last
yeah,
inning or 2 innings, be like, oh, when they give you the notification. But that game I watched beginning to end. Um, Other than that, in terms of in person that I've seen, so I'm here on the East Coast. Philadelphia is around here. One of my all time favorite position players was Chase Utley, and even though he was on the Phillies when he came to the Dodgers, that was one of my favorite shades. His first appearance back in Philly, he had probably one of the best games of his career. Hit 2 home runs, multi-homer game. Only time I've ever seen an opposing team's fan base cheer for the Dodgers. So that one I
um,
always keep with me as well. And I mean, who can't say also just them winning the 2020 World Series? That's probably, no matter what anybody says, it's my first time experience that team win, a team that I've put my heart and soul into, dedicated, watching, studying, and rooting for. And to see them getting over the hump that season, especially given the circumstances of that entire year. It was a weird year. For them to end on top, that's something I definitely look back on.
it's funny because I shared my daughter just graduated from college, but she was a class of 2020 high school graduate. And so I told my daughter, she's a Padres fan, but I told my daughter, I said, I'm so happy for the Dodgers and you. I know that sounds weird, but it's because of the journey from 2020. And you guys kind of both, I understand their emotionalness, the Dodgers, Pique, and all of them. I understand them being so emotional. I felt I kind of um, just really understood that because I wanted that desire from my daughter to graduate high school normally, and
Yeah,
she didn't have that. So, which is fine. She just graduated from college last month. But I just really connected with their feelings and all that they were saying of not having their family around, like their moms and dads and aunts and uncles. So that really resonated with me 2020. I think that would always be a special one,
yeah, and I think
considering.
when you look at this past season, a lot of the players that were on that team, they just felt vindicated that not only did the title actually kind of mean something, but then they got to celebrate the proper way, because that's the one thing I hate, that it didn't happen just because of given the circumstances. They didn't get to have the parade, and a lot of those Dodger players that were on that team were a lot of fan favorites. And it's not to kick anything with this current team, but Corey Seager that season, Cody Bellinger in his prime, Jock Peterson, multiple other guys, Walker Bueller fully healthy. When they
Turner.
won in
Yeah.
24, they got the full experience, the champagne showers and all that. I mean, hell,
Yeah.
Justin Turner didn't even get to celebrate with the team properly
No, that
during
was a
2020.
heartbreaking moment for me. I kind of
Yeah,
wanted him to just join the bus just for the sake of having a moment. I wish a lot of them could have joined that bus.
yeah,
Um, that would have been nice for them. So personally, I love stories, which is why I did this. That's the root of me starting this podcast. I love stories. And 30 for 30, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
yes,
Okay, so I don't think they've done new ones since, but I used to watch that all the time because I just think athletes in particular have they're so inspiring because of their journey to get to where they are, because a lot of them done it since they were kids. And then, as older you get, high school, college, it just gets slimmer and slimmer, your odds
yeah.
of making that, making pro in any sport. But then there's all these hurdles. A lot of them have these like no like all the odds against them to do anything in life. And you see them overcome, and then mentally, emotionally, physically, the grind just to be their best every game and every practice. So with that, what is, I guess, who I guess with that, like, what journey, what athlete is that person for you of really, like, there's Kobe, which is probably everybody's, a lot of people's favorite, just seeing him push through with injuries and still playing as if he didn't even have an injury. But who is your, I guess, that athlete, that all-time great athlete, just simply because of their journey? They don't even have to be the best of the best.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking recently, I would say kind of just the storyline of this past season. If you look at what Bueller went through,
Mm-hmm.
from missing almost 2 seasons with Tommy John surgery and various other arm and elbow, ailments, to kind of see the season he had, where it wasn't particularly good. I mean, he had a career high ERA over 5. There was debate whether he was even going to make the postseason roster. And then, injuries happen. Glass now gets shelved. Gavin Stone goes on the IL, so they kind of needed Bueller out of necessity. There's an argument to be had that if those guys are healthy, Bueller's probably not even on the roster. Bueller's probably not even closing out that World Series game. So to kind of see his growth, from I watched college baseball back then when he was on that Vanderbilt team. He kind of went through it. That's when his first Tommy John ended up having to happen, because he put it all on the line for Vanderbilt when they won their College World Series that season. And, he kind of did the same thing with the Dodgers this year, a very selfless act where all the injuries that he's had, he still said, I want the ball in this moment. I don't care if it really risks my potential, reward in the offseason, because he was a free agent. He did get the $21.5 million contract with the Red Sox. So that could have, say he gets injured again, that's probably not the money or the figure that he's getting. And who's to say, with a lot of free agents around right now, who's to say he even has a deal by that time? I would say, just looking at his story, I was there in Philadelphia where me and the other beat writers were kind of asking, well, where is Bueller? And Dave Roberts didn't really know. Nobody really knew. He kind of went AWOL for a couple weeks to kind of reinvent himself, look inward, go talk to a guru in Florida about his pitching mechanics. And then he comes back a couple weeks later. Something seemed to click. And then, the rest is history from there. But there's those type of athletes, the ones that endure the injuries and then come back from them. I mean, you can look at a variety of different players, especially in baseball. And I mean, like, even look at former Dodgers, like Cody Bellinger. He leaves LA after that 2-year stint where it was really bad, goes to the Cubs, has a really good year, banks off that, gets a contract, and then now he's on the New York Yankees for an American League contender. Those sports, those guys they're always in baseball, football, basketball, and those are the people that I would say you should look up to.
Definitely. And so, what do you see with social media and everything involved, YouTube and sports? Where do you see the future of sports journalism?
I mean, I think the future is kind of the present what it is right now. I think
Mhm.
X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, I think that's it's going to be hard to change that. I know there's a bunch of other apps out there that are trying to replicate it, whether it's what Meta's doing or Facebook's doing with Threads. You got Blue Sky, that's another one. I think at the end of the day, a lot of journalists use X or Twitter, and they like not only do you have the following on there, but you also have the ability to post articles yourselves on there. It's a very easy app to use, especially for people in journalism. At the end of the day, it's not very of a picture heavy thing. Like yeah, you can post videos and pictures and all that and links and stuff like that. But if you want words on a screen, that's kind of where you're going. That's where I would say most writers in every single sport use. Not much Facebook, not much YouTube's more for the podcasting and the talk show stuff. That's where, if that's your forte and that's what you're using and that's your platform, that makes sense for you right there. But I think those types of apps where it's on Twitter, that's where it makes the most sense. But I think you would be at a disadvantage to not use all of them. You should have, and that's what, if you look at all these major sport outlets, ESPN, that's why they have pages everywhere. That's why they have their shows broadcasting on YouTube, Spotify. You can find their podcast on the App Store, all that stuff. So I think you should utilize it all. But it's gonna be hard to beat X. And I know people, they're not liking it right now, but at the end of the day, that's the app everyone's still going to use until someone changes it.
I think people are having a change of heart, and the ones that stopped liking it, I think they're kind of hovering back, seeing what's over there.
It's hard. I saw a few writers, not going to name any names, but they tried other apps out, and then I saw them tweeting on X again, just because it's hard to build up your following base. I mean, there's some people, like some of these writers, that have hundreds of thousands of followers. It's hard to replicate that and still push your content on a lot of these new platforms. I mean, like Twitter has been around for like 2 decades, like that, almost two
Wow.
decades now.
Yeah.
So it's like that you're going to risk moving your entire platform that you've built to something else. And that's what all of these, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what pays the bills. The people that are reading your content and the views that you get per article, per post, that's where the money comes into all of that. So I think it would be hard to move away from platforms that are so pre-existing. That's why you don't, there was a period of time where you saw new apps like every day that people were trying out, but
Yeah.
now it's really just the main four. It's really just Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and then Instagram. Those are the ones that pretty much everybody uses
Well, don't let
these
the
days.
TikTok people hear you.
Well, TikTok too, but they're in their own little thing right now. There
They're in
was
their
like a
own
period
world.
of time where it went offline, but TikTok's another thing where it's like quick, easy videos that are accessible. I know a lot of players use it. A lot of writers utilize it. There's some stats and storylines they can drive off there. But yeah, TikTok's another big one, and it's just, I think it's just depending on who the person is. Like, do you want a visual representation of what you want to take, of what information you want to take in, or is it, do you want to read it and then take it in that way?
I agree. I completely agree. And so, what are your personal goals with being a sports journalist? What do you foresee that you want to accomplish, or just whatever your goals are? And what encouragement do you have for anybody who's pursuing high school, college students that are wanting to do what you do?
Yeah, I would say personal goals for myself and the page. I mean, we're just continuing to try to grow. I mean, we have around 40K followers on Twitter right now, a couple thousand on Facebook, a couple more on Instagram. And then on the YouTube side of thing, we're trying to, our goal before the season starts is just to hit, 20,000 subscribers. We're at like around 12 and a half right now. But just with the content, with the things that are happening right now in Dodgerland, there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of people that want those opinions and want to chime in as well. But for myself, I mean, it's kind of just getting better every single day. Whether it's connecting with more individuals, whether it's making sure that my writing is more sound, or how I can articulate it a little bit better than I did previously. I mean, there's sometimes when I go back in time or I go through my archive file and I'm like, all right, I wrote this article 4 or 5 years ago. Let's compare to what I did now. And I'm like, okay, I've definitely grown. So I'm doing something right. But that kind of goes into, what would I say to anybody else? And that's like, just because you're set in some way of life, you have a goal in mind, and I went through the education degree route, and now I'm doing something kind of completely different than that. Don't sell yourself short. At the end of the day, just give it a shot. That's what I would say. It is, make sure that if you think it's an opportunity that interests you, honestly just follow something that's going to make you happy, because if you're not doing something that makes you happy, then that's not the best life to live. But just give it a shot. I mean, I didn't think I would be writing about the team or covering the team as the way I do now if you asked me 4 or 5 years ago. So I mean, and that was just me taking a shot, reaching out to a blog and an organization, and then just taking it from there. And you just learn day by day. You meet new people, you have new experiences, and you just try to continue to grow from that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think what I've been hearing a lot this month in the new year is everybody just simply saying, just do it, just go for it.
Yeah.
And because you honestly don't have anything to lose
Yeah.
at all.
At the end of the day, I mean, if you see an opportunity out there, just what's stopping you from just putting your name out there? Maybe they find something they like and they'll work with you. Um, don't look at what your resume say one thing and they're looking for a different thing. Just put it out there.
Okay. So, lastly, what are your Dodger predictions for this coming season?
Alrighty. I mean, it's hard to not sound like a homer on all this, especially after what they've done this off season. But I mean, the goal is clear. I mean, they want to repeat as World Series champions. It hasn't been done in baseball in over 20 years. The last team to do it was the New York Yankees
Mm.
when they won 3 straight titles from '98 to 2000. So for the people in baseball that are arguing that there's no parity in the sport, that's your example right there. There's been a different champion pretty much every single season, but the Dodgers are putting their best foot forward. But it is extremely, extremely hard to repeat in baseball, and we've seen the Dodgers put teams together that can rival some of the best teams of all time. I mean, you look 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they won 111 games and got bounced in the first round. Anything can happen in baseball, and that's the thing that I love but also hate about this sport, is that after 162 games, whether you win 86 games, 90 games, 100 games, you don't know what's really going to happen until those players put their best foot forward. But I think the Dodgers are in a really great spot. I think you could just pencil them in for 100 or more wins already, as long as all things go according to plan. But even say if they do have an injury here or there, we even saw last season Mookie Betts
Mhm.
missed extended period of time. Max Muncy missed almost half the season. The starting pitchers all kind of went down in the second
It was
half,
stressful.
and they still ended up winning
Yeah.
98 games, which
Yeah.
was the best record in baseball. They pretty much rolled through the postseason minus, their 5 game set with the Padres, which kind of was probably the series of the postseason last year, just because of the rivalry and those two teams definitely not hating or definitely not liking each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, you saw what they did last year. Can they replicate that? It remains to be seen. But I would say you have to put them at the World Series favorite right now. I mean, everything they've done all off season, the team that they continued to have, even before they added all these players, they were still considered the World Series favorite by almost every single betting odds maker, and pretty much every MLB insider out there was penciling them in as champions. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because last year everybody kind of wrote them off at once October started, and they
I
kind of
didn't
proved
though.
everyone
I
wrong.
didn't. I
So
still had hope.
yeah, we had a lot of people lose a little bit of faith,
Yeah.
especially everything that happened, losing Glass now, losing Stone, Freddie Freeman having the ankle thing. There was a
Okay,
lot to
talk about
say.
athlete inspirational.
Yeah, what he
He,
did.
yeah,
It
he's a class act.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I think the Dodgers are just poised for success. I would not be shocked if they do repeat, but I have to see them. I have to see what they look like in October. But I would say they're clearly in a good spot right now, and they've put themselves in that position. But they've also put themselves in a position where every single game against another team, that team is going to try to play their best baseball. And I think at the end of the day, that's actually good for the Dodgers because then each day they're getting their opponent's best.
I agree. I completely agree. It's going to be an exciting time, especially when Otani starts, because he starts, what, July ish or something?
Yeah, so when he starts throwing, as far as I know, it's May is what they're
Okay.
probably going to wait for. He's been throwing all off season. Clearly, it's harder to get footage of him because a lot of these players would work out at Dodger Stadium, and they're going through that
Yeah.
$100 million renovation right now. So they're kind of having to find all different places to throw, whether it's at their home. Otani himself has gone to a couple different, Los Angeles, county high schools, throwing behind the scenes there before I believe he went back to his other home in Hawaii. But they'll all be back Arizona in like I think three
Valentine's
or four
weekend, right?
weeks. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's coming up
Valentine's.
really close.
That's so exciting. Well, I thank you so much, Cody, for spending the time with us and sharing about yourself and about Dodgers, of course. Can you share with listeners where to follow you, watch you, and listen and read?
Yeah, so clearly, dodgersbeat.com is where you can find all my writing and the Bleed Los podcast on YouTube, Instagram, pretty much every other social media, TikTok, X, all that stuff. I'm always on Twitter, X at Snavely Cody 6. You can find me there. I'm always tweeting about the team, kind of going over the latest rumors, what people are saying, and then stats, video highlights, stuff like that. And once the season gets rolled along, that's when the fun starts to begin, when we start doing our pregame, postgame, and interviewing players when the games start to be played. And like I said, we got spring training coming up in a couple weeks, so that's when the content train is going to go full forward, full throttle, and we're going to have a lot of content on all social medias.
Definitely. I know my husband and I, we watch a lot of Dodgers stuff on YouTube. I don't know if I don't know if any other married couple does that, but we do it more than watching regular TV. That's our TV watching. So we love you guys. We love, always entertained and love hearing your guys' thoughts, opinions, stories. It's really great to stay updated. So we thank you guys, your whole team, and you for all that you guys do. And your reporting is just great. So
All
thank you
right.
so much, Cody.
Yeah, thank you.